Hello, time for another episode of The Fine Year, where I review the big year I made in 2019, and everything turns out just fine. This time we're back from Florida. I finished the trip where I left you hanging in Florida, and we visit Arizona and Texas. That's a pretty good month for a birder, eh? So I hope you enjoy this. The 1st of April found me still in Florida on a boat to the Dry Tortugas, hoping for a major fallout of spring migrants to pump up my big year list. Migrants were not what I saw first, though. It was frigate birds surrounding one of the islands. Another type of seabird surrounded the island, terns. Here's a pretty royal tern I found. Other terns nesting on the Dry Tortugas were sooty and bridled terns. They were both hard to capture, but I finally got a decent photo of a sooty tern. There were even a few brown noddies on the island. I'd seen them before in Puerto Rico and hoped to find a black one, but I was not that lucky this year. My only hooded warblers of the year were found there, favorites of mine from the time I lived in Alabama. I see ruddy turnstones in California, but they're usually not in this bright breeding plumage, so I'm including that photo here of the one from Dry Tortugas. Back on the mainland, I scoured the beaches until I found one of my favorite plovers, the piping plover. They're a real cutie. In early April, upon my return from Florida, I prepared for my next big trip, a long drive through Arizona to Texas. I also wanted to visit Joshua Tree National Park on the way. Joshua Tree is just off Interstate 10, heading west out of Los Angeles. It is almost a 3-hour drive from our home in Ventura County, so it is not a trip I make more than once or twice a year. I find April a good time to visit, as in addition to the birds migrating through, there's often been enough moisture at that time of year for beautiful flowers. One common resident of Joshua Tree is the ash-throated flycatcher. These are particularly active this time of year, calling and establishing breeding territories. A less common bird, which I felt fortunate to run across in Joshua Tree, was the Lawrence's goldfinch. I am not good at predicting the location of these birds, as their flocks seem to wander irregularly, and it is one I did have some concern about missing during the year. Even better, some posed for me, so I was able to photograph a species that had eluded my camera previously. This was a big relief, as now it would save me what would have been a likely day trip to find a single species otherwise. I hope to avoid that kind of trip as much as possible. I prefer seeing birds in groups, not one at a time after a long drive. Another good find in Joshua Tree, though expected, was the Costas hummingbird. I nearly always see them there in the spring. This photo does not do justice to his purplish throat gorget, but you can see how long his wings are. During the severe drought period in the early 2000 teens, we had one or two show up each spring at the feeders at our house, but we've not had one for 5 or 6 years now. My favorite areas to bird in Joshua Tree are Barker Dam and Cottonwood Spring, but any oasis should have a few interesting birds. I also learned a lesson about being careful this spring, as while walking through a wash, not paying close enough attention, I heard a loud rattle at my feet. My instincts luckily made me jump about 10 feet in the right direction, away, at which point I turned around and found a large rattlesnake. He posed for me, and I thanked him for not striking. I was far more careful in most western habitats for the rest of the year. I had gone to Joshua Tree on my way to Arizona, and as I neared Phoenix, I made a stop at an unmarked location in the desert known on eBird as the Thrasher Spot. Although I knew I was late in the year to have a good chance to see thrashers, I still felt it was worth taking a chance. Also, it was late afternoon, and the best time to search for them was early morning, so I had two things going against me. However, I felt I needed to take advantage of any known location to find the Cott's thrasher. Other thrashers, such as Bendire's, have been seen there in the past, and that one in particular would also be difficult for me to find this year. Unfortunately, the only birds I could find were Gambel's quail and a few mourning doves, no thrashers. Just as I was heading to the car to leave, though, A lovely Swainson's hawk circled low overhead, checking me out. That hawk made this stop worthwhile. Madera Canyon, south of Tucson in the Santa Rita Mountains, has been one of Gail and my favorite vacation stops for the last several years. The Santa Rita Lodge there hosts a large number of hummingbird feeders that attract such Arizona specialties as Rively's hummingbird. Other Arizona specialties, such as painted redstarts and hepatic tanagers, are there as well. As I was driving to the lodge, I got excited by a female elegant trogon flying over the car. Perhaps this year I could finally photograph one. After checking in and confirming they had been seen at the spot I had driven past, I returned down the hill. I searched pretty hard throughout the next 2 days, but to no avail. I did find this pretty dusky-capped flycatcher there, however. Another hummingbird common at the lodge feeders this time of year is the broad-billed hummingbird. I believe they are mostly absent during the winter months, but they were out in force in April. With their blue-green plumage and brightly colored bill, they are one of the prettiest hummingbirds in the country. A contingent of wild turkeys attends the bird feeders at the Santa Rita Lodge, and in the spring the males strut their stuff. I'm not a turkey expert, but I have read these are the Gould subspecies, which is the largest subspecies found in the U.S. They are certainly big, and their displays are pretty and fun to watch. In the spring, the area around Madera Canyon has a wide variety of western migrants, such as this Bell's vireo. Vireos are tough for me, so I had to match the song with my Audubon app. There are so many different habitats in the area, from the brushy pastures and desert areas to the riparian area near the stream flowing down from the mountains, and even to the evergreens and sycamores on the side of the mountain. So many species either breed or migrate through this area. There's a famous spot where elf owls nest, and other species of owls can also be heard calling in the evening. Nightjars, too. While not a part of my big year, in the past, Gail and I have heard Mexican whippoorwills up at the top trailhead in the mountain trail parking lot. Another bird found in the riparian area while I was searching for trogons was this Townsend solitaire. Although in the shadow, the buff color on his wings showed nicely, which does not always happen for me. One fun bird seen only in this part of the country is the yellow-eyed junco. The yellow eyes of this bird give it a sinister look to me. Along with this junco, I have seen 3 forms of dark-eyed junco here: Oregon, gray-headed, and pink-sided. I have to admit, I still count these separately, although the powers that be have lumped them. They look so different, I wanted to see all of them. Usually I see them all here, but I could not find any pink-sided juncos this year. One last photo from the Santa Rita Lodge is this Arizona woodpecker on a wooden support from one of the lodge feeders. This is another southern Arizona specialty, so he earned a spot in this presentation. There are many acorn woodpeckers there as well, and I worry a little sometimes that the less common Arizona woodpeckers are being driven out. Usually 1 or 2 appear for me, however. I spent one long morning at the Payton Center for Hummingbirds. This is the home of a family who fed birds at their home near Patagonia for a long time and began to draw a large number of species. When the owners passed on, the local Audubon chapter, with financial help from the American Bird Conservancy, took over support of the property and keep it opening and functioning for birders. There are probably others. Apologies to any I omit. Here are a pair of summer tanagers who visited while I was there. The crown jewel of the Payton Center is the violet-crowned hummingbird. This is one of the few places in the country where this bird can be seen with some predictability. I was quite happy both to see it and to get good photographs, as I had missed it on trips there in the previous year. A very beautiful life bird indeed. Curve-billed thrashers seem to be the most easily found of the Arizona thrashers, although I also saw chrysals in the brush below Madera Canyon. I could not photograph that one due to distance and the brushy terrain, but was able to match the song and to see its rufous-colored vent. This curve-billed thrasher was much more cooperative. On the way to Texas, I made a quick stop at the eastern section of Saguaro National Park. I really hoped to see a Pyrrhuloxia there, and down one of the trails I found one singing in a distant tree. I could not get close enough for an excellent photo, but at least I was able to catch him singing from the treetops without disturbing him. My episode with the rattlesnake, and just general national park ethics, kept me from venturing off the trail through the brush to get closer. Other birds seen there with even less satisfying photos were gilded flickers and rufous-winged sparrows. When I reached Texas, the first stop the next morning was Estero Llano State Park. Even before I entered, a yellow-billed cuckoo flew in and began hunting insects in the treetops. I had to maneuver quite a bit to get this awkward photo, but as this was the only cuckoo I saw all year, I am quite grateful for it. Estero Llano was the first stop on my Texas Rio Grande Valley adventure, and it provided me views of many Texas birds. I can't put all their photos on here, this video would take several hours, but I've tried to include some I found interesting, like this shot of black-bellied whistling ducks. I saw fulvous whistling ducks as well, but they were sleeping and did not want to pose. This is one of my favorite photos that I took all year. As you may recall, in Florida I was lining up to photograph a pretty blue-headed vireo when I was distracted by a nearby warbler and a swallow-tailed kite swooping overhead. I had never photographed this vireo, so I was very grateful that this one gave me a second opportunity. I ignored the long-tailed thrasher making noise in the tree behind me and concentrated on the bird this time. Although perhaps not a classic bird shot, I enjoy taking photos in the understory with numerous leaves and branches partially hiding the subject. Plus, as I mentioned, I find these birds quite pretty. Luckily for me, the long-tailed thrasher continued to forage in the trees behind me, and I was able to catch a few shots of it as well. It helped to ease the sting of missing out on the LeContes previously. These birds are quite large for a songbird, larger than the brown thrashers, which they resemble. As I was leaving the state park, I paused on a bench to rest at the back side of the visitor center near a hummingbird feeder. This nice brown-crested flycatcher popped out just in front of me, looking around for several minutes before moving on. I had thought I might have seen one in the Florida Keys. The call seemed to match my app, but that bird was slimmer and darker than this one, so I was unsure. I feel much better about this one's ID. The next morning found me at the South Padre Island Birding and Nature Center. This boardwalk is not free, as the one by the nearby convention center is, so I usually see the convention center mentioned in blogs and videos. I found the entry fee here worth the cost, as the birding from the Nature Center boardwalk seemed far superior to me. Right at the start, I found this roseate spoonbill overlooking the tidal marsh. Just a beautiful view. It was not as pink as I might have wished. Probably it was a first or second year bird, but I loved the photos I took of it. It was a good omen for the day. This Sora was one of two rails I saw there, the other being a clapper rail. These Sora photos were better, and I got good photos of another clapper later in the year, so only this one makes the cut for now. I usually find Soras sometime during the year in California, but seldom can I get a decent photo. These next few photos are from a spot on South Padre Island, known on eBird as the Valley Land Fund Lots. It is essentially some natural area lots which are amidst the island neighborhood with feeders and water set up. I don't know if I would call what I saw a full fallout, perhaps just a mini fallout, but there were certainly many beautiful migrant birds, such as this indigo bunting. What was amazing was when I returned a few days later, the wind had shifted and all but one or two of the birds had moved on. Migration in action. I was lucky to be there on the right day. Here is an orchard oriole from the fallout. It is a beautiful male, which I had become familiar with from my years living in Alabama. It was crucial to me to see southern birds like this on my trips to Florida and Texas, as I did not plan to visit other southern states during the year. The southeastern states have great birding, but as part of my economic planning, I hoped Florida and Texas would suffice. I was essentially correct, although I think I missed photo opportunities I might have had if I had spent more time in the southeast. Here is yet another bird from the Valley Land Fund site, a male painted bunting. I had seen several in Florida, but none as pretty as the ones I saw this day. Hard to believe after seeing these males, but I'm still more fond of the female I first saw in Mexico. Male or female, all these birds are beautiful. Easter Sunday found me venturing behind the border wall to Sable Palms Bird Sanctuary. This is a converted old plantation and was perhaps my favorite site in Texas. One bird I was looking for was the Altamira oriole, but this is not that. This is a hooded oriole, one that we often get at our hummingbird feeders back in California. I really like the way he posed in this flowering tree. And if they don't come to your hummingbird feeders, this is a great place to find them. The olive sparrow is a cute little guy I found bathing in a small pool of water. This was a lifer for me. You can see the water drops in this photo that he shook off after his bath. One of the main targets of my Texas trip was the green jay. Jays are fun birds in general. All the jay species show a lot of personality, and most are colorful. None of the jays in the States are as striking as the green jays, and I enjoyed photographing them. As I mentioned earlier, I am fond of pictures of birds in the understory, with some foliage slightly obscuring them, so this picture met that requirement. Sable Palms was one of the only places in the States where I might find the least grebe, and after a few misses, I finally found this one in the pond I continued to visit. There were a couple of birders from the Midwest I bumped into at several sites in Texas, and I'd become friendly with them. After I had almost given up, they encouraged me to revisit the pond because they had seen the grebe. It pays to make friends while birding. I startled a flock of plain chachalacas in the morning when I started down the trail. Most flew up to the top of the trees and scolded me, but this one hung back and we checked each other out. For a large bird, I found them surprisingly stealthy, and though I saw a few at several locations, I did not see as many nor have as many photo opportunities as I had expected to have. This little beauty is a white-tipped dove, one I had seen in Panama years earlier, but never in the States. My views then had not been as good as the ones I had this trip, though, and when you see them close up, you realize how lovely they are. Very delicate looking, with subtle colors. The following day, I decided to visit South Padre Island, hoping to find some new birds in the beach areas I had not visited previously. On the beach just past the convention center, I found a good spot, with no other birders early in the morning. These black skimmers put on a little show for me. There were many black-bellied plovers on the beach, and eBird also had listed one or two golden plovers. The golden light of the rising sun confused me, making many of them appear somewhat golden, even though I was sure most were black-bellied. Trying to make an ID based on bill size also proved frustrating. I ended up calling them all black-bellied plovers. Perhaps a more unusual sight was a small group of sandwich terns. This pair exhibited breeding behavior, with the male offering the female a fish, and the pair later coupling. I had seen these in Puerto Rico and Ireland on previous work assignments. It was nice to see them in the States. The wind had shifted and taken all the birds away from the Valley Land Fund site, so I hurried over to Laguna Atascosa Wildlife Refuge. There were several birds there I had not yet seen and I hoped to find. This bronzed cowbird was one of those, and it tolerated me and my camera. At Laguna Atascosa, I finally saw my lifer Altamira oriole. It is not much different than the hooded oriole to a casual observer, with a smaller area of black on its throat and an orange epaulette on its shoulder instead of the white one of the hooded oriole. I was glad to have it, though. I finally made it to the Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge the next day. Unfortunately, I had an accident with my camera, so I did not get many pictures there. Perhaps the best one I got was of this great kiskadee. I had only seen one other kiskadee on the trip this far, so I was glad this one showed up and was posing well, and glad my camera worked for a moment. Before the camera quit working, I came across a pair of Harris's hawks at close range. They were also tolerant of me as I snuck past them on the trail. I wondered if they had a nest in the area, or if it was too late in the season for them. I put this last one in as proof of my Kallima warbler hike, certainly not because of the picture quality. I couldn't get my camera to focus, but as I have doubts about returning, I made sure to get the warbler on record. Texas turned out to be everything I had hoped for. Combined with the excellent trip through Arizona, my yearly total jumped up to 422. Perhaps even more exciting, my count of new USA lifeless birds jumped to 54. So many places in Texas not only lived up to their billing, but surpassed it. South Padre Island exceeded my already high expectations, and I really enjoyed some other spots such as Sable Palm Sanctuary and Estero Llano. The only unfortunate aspect of the trip was that it was so long I was wearing down by the end. I skipped Salineno and the area there, which meant I did not see the Audubon's oriole and a few others I might need. I made a mental note to make that my contingency plan if I needed some birds once December rolled around. For now, it was almost May, the height of migration season in the northern states, and I had to get home and prepare for travel there.